thank you all for coming. I didn't really have anything to say, but Maharaj is from here in central New York, and we're very pleased to have him here in Ithaca. And stay tuned.
Come sit over here so you can see this beautiful wall.
Oh, presentation. First South sign with an art up there.
There's nobody, this way. Is there anybody here that's unfamiliar with Bhagavad Gita and needs a Bhagavad Gita introduction? Everyone's familiar with Bhagavad Gita. Good. Because this is an introduction to Bhagavad Gita. But you already know. So, there's some people from out of town. Are you from Ithaca?
Nope, I'm from Syracuse.
From?
Syracuse?
Syracuse. No, this gentleman.
I'm from Ithaca.
You're from Ithaca. And you know Bhagavad Gita a little bit?
Mm-hmm. A little bit,
A
yeah.
little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Same? More than a little bit.
Yeah, I studied this quite a bit.
Very good. Okay. And your friends?
No.
No?
I'm Eric. Nice to meet you all.
I know we didn't come together.
You did come together. Okay. Okay. I need to know how much people know about Bhagavad Gita so I can calibrate where to start. That's all. This is the cover, or one of the classic paintings illustrating Arjuna, the main person who's hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita, warrior, and here's Krishna, who has become his chariot driver because of their friendship with one another. And the background of how, what's your name?
My name's Joe.
Joe.
And I should tell you, I've read it through,
Okay.
over the past 20 years. So
20 years?
but I still feel like I'm always learning
Okay,
from
okay,
it. So,
okay. So
some-
you know the background.
yeah.
Okay, fine, I don't have to do that. The message of Bhagavad Gita about 5 days ago, I was in Buffalo, and there's a yoga studio in Buffalo. Nice place, very nice place, and they knew very little about Bhagavad Gita, but there was one lady, two ladies in the class that are reading Bhagavad Gita. One is teaching Bhagavad Gita, but she doesn't have Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. She has something, and just a little sharing. There was somebody that came for the program yesterday, Oriental, someplace that part of the world, and he wanted a Bhagavad Gita. He wanted to recommend what Bhagavad Gita to read. That's what was his first question. So I did share this with him at the time, but I'll share with you my introduction to Bhagavad Gita. I had a philosophy professor, and we developed a friendship outside of class. And one of the things that we did, he would read his poetry, because he was a philosopher and he wrote poetry. And another thing we did together is we went to the pottery room, and he was sharing with me how making pottery helped him feel centered, or be centered, because with a glob of clay and spin the wheel, and then you have to center the clay into the wheel, and then you draw the clay up and make a pot. So like that we had exchanges. And one day, just out of the blue, he gave me a Bhagavad Gita. He said, here, it's a gift for you. Well, thank you. I didn't know what it was, he couldn't pronounce it. So I was carrying it around for a while. I had this clipboard and stack of books, and it was the skinny ones, I put it on the top. And when visiting another friend in his home, he said, oh, I have one of those, but it's a different one. Here, you take mine too. So now I had 2 Bhagavad Gitas, and I hadn't read either. And I thought, if there's 2, there's probably more. So I went to the library, SUNY Buffalo, and sure enough, there were 5 additional translations besides the 2 that I had. So I checked out all 5, I started reading them, and I came to 2 conclusions. It's not a book of poetry, and I don't understand it. I didn't tell that fellow yesterday about that. It makes a difference which version you read. So then, some time passed, and I met devotees, and the devotees gave me Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. So I started reading version number 8. And I was surprised, it was really easy to understand. I couldn't figure out why it was so easy to understand, I couldn't understand the other 7. But I kept reading because it was nice. And after some time it became clear that this was descending knowledge as opposed to ascending knowledge. It wasn't based on scholarship, or in Prabhupada's words, searching for the sun with a flashlight. That wasn't the system, it was descending knowledge. So that's why it was easy to understand. And that got me on the path of reading more, and here I am speaking to you some years later about Bhagavad Gita. So here's a nice painting I like of Srila Prabhupada with the mudra of giving transcendental knowledge to his audience. Here's another, since you've been around a while, tell them the Prabhupada story. This just came to my attention 2 days ago. There was a period of time, as you may know, Srila Prabhupada had a heart attack, and he was taken to a hospital, or to a convalescence place rather, along the Jersey Shore in the summer. So they had a nice flyer inviting people to come Tompkins Square Park from 2 to 5, same time the Prabhupada would be there, as a prayer vigil for Prabhupada's health. But going back in time, Prabhupada had nothing. He had a room to stay in Dr. Mishra's 72nd Street, I think it is, cross street. So Dr. Mishra had a home, and he had some offices. So Prabhupada stayed in one of his offices. In the office, there was no running water, there was no toilet, no kitchen, just 4 walls in an office space. So he got up in the morning, and at a certain time, when Dr. Mishra was up, he went to Dr. Mishra's home, and he took his bath and did the cooking, and cooked in Dr. Mishra's kitchen, offered to Krishna, and offered Dr. Mishra some prasadam. But he didn't have a place for meeting people, like this is a nice place for meeting people. So he had next to nothing money, some money that had been given to him in his sale of his books. So he had a very small place, like very small place. And in that very small place there was a little kitchen, and he would cook, and he would have a gathering of maybe 5, 4, 6 people like that in his little place, because that's all would fit. And there was some of the students that he had met from Dr. Mishra's place, and little by little the people were coming, but never substantial. So one particular day, it's a Prabhupada story, he cooked, and he was expecting that the same 5, 6 people to come, but nobody came. He wasn't discouraged. He preached to the 4 walls. But the story is, he had a little recording machine, one of those reel-to-reel tape recorders, and he knew how to use it somehow. And he just spoke to the tape recorder in the four walls. Later, that recording was transferred into the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. So the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, in how many ever different languages it's been read, probably millions, and his starting point was the four walls in his recording machine. But he wasn't discouraged. Main thing was he wasn't discouraged. He used whatever opportunity Krishna gave him, and that was the opportunity at that time. And I don't know if his intention was this should be about the introduction to Bhagavad Gita in the future, but that's what it became. So, great personality, carrying love for Krishna in everything that he did, including giving us the message of Bhagavad Gita. Now, the message of Bhagavad Gita is meant to help us find solutions to problems. Arjuna certainly had a problem, and we have our share of problems too. But not always do we understand what the real problems of life are. That the problems can be, the parking lot is muddy, or my feet are cold because the floor is cold, or something. It can be some very short-term, temporary something problem. Like nobody came for the Bhagavad Gita class. Or something. But the real problem is birth and death, and then in between disease and old age. The real problems of life are a solution to real problems of life come if we ask the right questions about the real problems of life. Now this isn't working. That's a problem. Who am I? What is the standard of true happiness? One of the topics I've been speaking about lately is search for happiness, because it's something people relate to. At RIT, that was our topic, search for happiness. There was an interesting young fellow in the audience from Oswego. He wanted to know, why is it important to be happy? He's a philosopher. Parents told me afterwards, he's a philosopher. And it's important because it's who we are. Because we're parts of the Supreme. And the Supreme is Satchidananda. We're small Satchidanandas. The particle of gold is qualitatively the same as the gold mine. So because it's who we are, or say to not have happiness, it's our disease condition. So what's that standard of true happiness, and how do you get there? Or, we did this yesterday evening, what's my personal purpose of life? What's the mission, what you feel that your life is meant to be in that space in between birth and death? Am I living the life of others' expectations? And how do I solve these real problems, the birth, death, disease, and old age, from Bhagavad Gita? Those of you who are familiar, you know. Janma, Mrityu, and in between Jara Vyadi. How do you solve that problem? You have a copy of this, right? So this is a hyperlinked text. You'll get a copy if you don't already have one. And you just click on the depression or loneliness or seeking peace or something, and there's messages in Bhagavad Gita that give practical solutions to these kinds of problems. They're all temporary. They're not the birth, death, disease, old age one, but they're the temporary ones. The worldly ones. Losing hope, forgetfulness. I just was dealing with forgetfulness. found the PowerPoint. I sent a copy to you in February 26th. And I sent a copy to Jumana Jivana. But Jumana Jivana remembered that I had sent you a copy saying this is the topic along with the PowerPoint. But I was forgetful, and so were you, that I sent you the topic. I spent a lot of time looking for that topic, but I asked the right person who had a good memory. I sent you a copy.
Oh, memory. I'm sorry.
Yeah, forgetfulness, like me. But we're back in action now. Jumana Jivana has a good memory. So these are problems, they bring us difficulties, but the bigger one is the goal of life, and then how to live it practically in day-to-day life. Bhagavad Gita. Nice painting. Krishna and Arjuna, with Arjuna requesting Krishna to draw his chariot between the two armies. Look at those big armies. And he decides, I can't do this. Somebody that was new to reading Bhagavad Gita said after reading chapter 1, I was convinced he shouldn't do it. Because he gives good reasons. I mean, reasonable, ethical reasons. I can't do this and that, there's 7 different reasons. But Krishna doesn't settle on, okay, whatever you want to do is okay. I'm okay, you're okay. That's not what he says. He wants him to go forward. And there's a purpose. The purpose is his appearance in this world. His appearance in this world is to annihilate the demoniac kings, and there they are. So Arjuna, I want you to do this service. Nice painting. This is the blind King Dhritarashtra. Joe, you know who Dhritarashtra is, right? Tell me who is Dhritarashtra.
I don't know the whole story.
Okay.
Yeah. I know.
I'm not picking on you.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I'm interacting. Just
Yeah.
want to stimulate.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dhritarashtra was the elder brother. There were 3 brothers. The first the Vedic culture is the firstborn son will become the next king. So he was born blind. So he was not eligible to become king. His next younger brother was Pandu. Pandu was to become the king. Pandu became the king, but he died young with 5 sons. So Dhritarashtra, the blind king, if I can't be king, then my son should be king. So he was in conspiracy, especially his eldest son, Duryodhana. I like putting some sound, Duryodhana. And the Pandavas. So Duryodhana was conspiring always, murder, this and that and the other thing. He was the bad guy. And the sons of Pandu were virtuous. So it's the good guys against the bad guys. The context of Bhagavad Gita, it's nice to say this, it's a treatise on what is proper conduct or ethical conduct, or the way that one should live one's life in this world. Worldly principles of good conduct. And then in juxtaposition is the bad guys. But they don't care. Although they know, they don't care. So, Dhritarashtra is not on the battlefield because he's blind, but he has an assistant. His name is Sanjaya. And Sanjaya was a disciple of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Vedas, had a disciple named Sanjaya, and Sanjaya had some mystic powers. One of the mystic powers is he had like a television in his heart. Although he didn't have a camera, he could see and hear what's going on in a distant place. So he was sitting with the king in their wherever they were, and informing the king what's going on in the battlefield. So he narrated the whole thing as if he was there, but he wasn't there. And you can see by the artist has Dhritarashtra really excited to find out what's going on, because for him it's the kingdom, and his son's becoming the king. And so he's hearing from Sanjaya what's going on in the battlefield, and then chapter 1 is the powerful warrior Arjuna. And Arjuna is so powerful. I'm going to tell a nice story. Arjuna is so powerful that one time there was a scene, it's in Mahabharata, but there's a scene where Arjuna saw a wild boar, and it looked like just a regular jungly guy saw the wild boar at the same time. They shot their arrows at the same time. They both hit the wild boar at the same time. And the jungly looking guy said to Arjuna, "Step aside, it's my boar. I hit him first. It's my boar." And Arjuna was like, "What? I'm Arjuna." So, they had said, "You're going to have to defeat me in battle if you want to take that boar." So there's a battle and battle and a battle, and Arjuna's firing arrows, and the arrows don't do anything. It was Lord Shiva in disguise who was testing the prowess of Arjuna. And Arjuna's arrows, he had a quiver that had endless arrows, and his quiver became empty. He didn't know who's this person? Maybe he's a demigod or something. So he took his bow and started chasing the Aborigine guy with his bow and was ready to whack him. And the Aborigine guy took the bow and it entered into his body, disappeared. Whoa, who are you? And so he got clubs, like, trunks of trees, and this other warrior person who was Lord Shiva in disguise, who's just like a tribal person in the forest, broke all the trees and the big boulders, and then with his fists and fighting and nothing, it was invincible. And Arjuna powerful, so Arjuna understood this isn't the only possibility is Lord Shiva. So he right in front of him built a Shiva Linga, began worshipping the Shiva Linga, and the tribal person transformed himself into Lord Shiva and said, "You please me very much. You're a very powerful warrior. Ask me for anything." He said, "I want your weapons." And the weapon that he wanted specifically was the Pashupat weapon, that Lord Shiva said, "This weapon is capable of destroying the universe. And I'll give you the mantra to use the weapon, but you can't use it on any mortal." So he got the Pashupat weapon of Lord Shiva. He's so powerful, he could satisfy Lord Shiva. He couldn't defeat him. And there's more than what. So he's a powerful person. He's not an ordinary person. But he's finished. "I can't do this." He drops his bow, turns to Krishna, "What should I do?" And that's the scene where Krishna begins instructing him what to do. And of course, it starts with the teaching of the body, etc. Here's a nice little cover, the essence of Bhagavad Gita. I'll read the text, it's pretty simple. The Bhagavad Gita is universally renowned as the jewel of India's spiritual wisdom, spoken by Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to his intimate disciple Arjuna. The Gita's 700 concise verses provide a definitive guide to the science of self-realization. No other philosophical or religious work reveals in such lucid and profound way the nature of consciousness, the self, the universe, and the Supreme. And there's one other thing, that's time. So Prabhupada's rendering of Bhagavad Gita was primarily based on the commentary of these two personalities, gives their dates of their lives, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhusan. Prabhupada dedicated his commentary to Baladev Vidyabhusan, and one of the reasons is that Baladev Vidyabhusan used a classical approach to making his commentary. Something like what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. I don't know if you're familiar with Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Heard his name before? No. Prabhupada's spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta. Prabhupada's spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta. And Bhaktisiddhanta's father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Late 1800s, early 1900s. Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote something like some number of books. How many books?
110.
Huh?
110.
110. I was going to say 100. He wrote a lot of books. And maybe 80% of those books at least makes mention of the essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And he coined the phrase, the 10 essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Dasa, Mula. Mula means root, Dasa means 10. So 10 essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It was a theme, it was a drum and a trumpet that he beat again and again and again because he wanted to give the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And that's a classical form. You take a structure that gives essences and you repeat it, and it becomes like one of your anthems, one of your themes. So Baladev did the same thing, specific to Bhagavad Gita, by saying that there's 5 main topics in Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada followed that system in his introduction. And the 5 main topics of Bhagavad Gita are these. Pale yellow, pale blue doesn't work so well. Ishvara, or God. Jiva, the soul. Material nature, or Prakriti. Time, or Kala. And fruitive activity, or karma. So everybody knows this one. Fruitive activity. It's this world, the world of fruitive activity. And we have some idea about the soul, then material nature, time, and Ishvara. So we're going to go through them quickly. Here's a nice illustration that indicates several of them in one picture, 3 of them at least. It's a guy running through space. Earth, water, fire, air, his arms are air. Earth, water, fire, air, all around is the sky. And then the subtle, that's the gross physical body, then the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego. That's, I guess, his head. And then that's the material energy, that's Prakriti. And then here is the soul, the jiva, and next to the soul is the supreme soul, Ishvara. He's the controller of Prakriti, and the controller, for that matter, of living entity. He's the controller of all controllers. So it's a nice painting depicting at least 3 of the 5 primary topics. Now, something about the soul, so we're going to go into a little bit about the soul. Something that I heard many years ago, several times during Prabhupada's recordings or lectures, he would say that the soul is both conscious and consciousness. And when I first heard that, my thought was, that's cool. And then I heard him say it a few more times, and I thought, what did he mean when he says that? So I'm going to describe. Took some time, but in course of time, I read something from the Upanishads, and in the Upanishads it says the soul is conscious and consciousness, just like a lamp is both luminous and it lights up pots and plates in the room. You know how the Upanishads are, they're very terse and compact. So here's an image of a lamp, so the wick that's sticking out of that little clay cup, that's luminous. But it's not just luminous, it's lighting up object or the space in the room that the lamp is sitting. So just as the lamp is both luminous and lights up pots and plates, the soul is conscious and consciousness. So the soul is within the body, and consciousness extends outside the body. Like I'm looking out the window and I see some cars parked out there and a little graveyard next door and things like that. Some neighbors. So senses, the senses are instruments, but behind the instrument there's the power of sight, the power of hearing, etc. The instrument can break, but the power is still there. The power is there because the soul is there. So resting the power of the senses are extending from the conscious self, and they extend out. Sound, sight, smell, etc. is emanating from the soul. So there's divisions of consciousness, but the soul is the conscious entity. And that conscious entity is situated within the region of the heart, along with the supersoul. There are some characteristics of the soul that's important to know that Bhagavad Gita teaches. And somehow it's not working. Unfortunately, many people, instead of identifying with the soul, which is what they are, they identify with something they're not, which is matter that's covering the soul. And as you can see, I like visual things. So here's an eggshell, and inside the eggshell, something you don't normally see is some light coming through the crack of the eggshell. That light that's coming through the crack in the eggshell is coming from a light source. Just as consciousness is extending out into the world around us through the conscious self that's inside. And self-realization means to no longer identify with the covering, but to have consciousness separate from the covering. We deal with the covering, we work with it, we engage it in different ways, but it's not who we are. Self-realization means to recognize who you are, distinct from who you aren't. And that's a nice gift from Bhagavad Gita. Some teachings in Bhagavad Gita about the soul. The soul can be experienced or perceived by the presence of consciousness, already mentioned. Many spiritual traditions of the world accept consciousness as being a symptom of the soul, but this goes a little bit further. It's not a symptom, but it's inextricably the same as light and the source of the light. There's sameness. At the time of death, all physical and chemical components of the body remain in place, but something non-physical has been lost. And even through our language, we identify ourselves as being different from the body. Pretty simple. Pandemic kind of changed a lot of things, and one of the things that changed was regularly high school and college groups that study religion in some form or fashion, they would bring their group to the temple. And I learned this from their visit to the temple, is commonly in schools they teach the difference between this one and that one is their rituals. So they like coming at a time when we do our rituals. So it starts at 7 o'clock. Then at 7 o'clock, they get there a little ahead of time. For those of you who've been to temples, you know. 7 o'clock, the pujari comes from behind the deity altar and stands there waiting for the clock to tick at 7 o'clock, and they blow the conch 3 times. So that's a ritual. Then the curtain opens. Then the next ritual is Jimuna singing at all of our temples in ISKCON. It's a nice ritual. that she sings Govinda hymns, 2 of them. And then the pujari does another ritual. He rings the bell and offers some incense, and when that's over, we sing some songs. And we go back to temple room and another ritual, Guru Puja, and then another ritual is the morning class. So they like, this is our Krishna rituals. So one of the things that especially with younger audiences, you may want to do this if you have this opportunity in the future. Say, who's the smartest kid in the class? Everyone giggles. And everybody looks at the same person because there's always the smartest person in the class. And that depends. Sometimes they're shy, sometimes it's like, yes, I'm the smartest kid. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? So, can you point to your arm? Can you point to your head? Can you point to your leg? Can you point to your different parts of the body? Now, point to you. Sometimes they freeze, or they just go like this, or sometimes they go like this. But it's identification with the body, and then it makes it easier to make the point. Let's do it again. We said, my hand, my head, my arm, my foot, my leg. There's the me, and then there's the object. So who's the me? And it's not the body, because even by our languages, there's a distinction between the object and the possessor of the object. These are my shoes, but the shoes are not me. So here's this gets lots of questions. This is a painting of an out-of-body experience where someone's undergoing cardiac arrest. You probably all know this story, type of thing, OBE, out-of-body experience, and the patient sometimes survives, and sometimes when they survive, they experience the out-of-body experience, that is the subtle body rises above the operating table. They're looking down at they're looking at their body on the operating table and hearing the conversation between the doctors and the nurses and the technicians and everybody. So this painting is taken from a book, or devotees wrote about a book from Dr. Sabam from Emory University in Atlanta. He was both a teacher and a surgeon, heart surgeon. And at the end of some cardiac arrest operation, he went to the patient, did the bedside manner thing, and said, "How you doing?" And the patient said, I'm in pain, but I'm okay, but I want to share with you an experience." And he told him the experience. And the details and details and details, and this happened, the nurse said this, the technician did that, you said this, you did that, like exactly what happened. He said, "How do you know all this?" "I was watching from above the operation table." So, when there's cardiac arrest, two things. When there's cardiac arrest, it means blood doesn't go to the brain. And when blood doesn't go to the brain functions stop. Second, so you're dead, at least you're not functioning. Second is the seat of consciousness is not the body, it's not the brain either, not any part of the body. Consciousness is something that's separate. So he was like, there's got to be an explanation for this. So he started asking other surgeons, and he ended up 3-4 years later writing a book describing other cardiac patients reported out-of-body experiences. And he, at the conclusion of his book, I just mainly read the conclusion, was, I hate to say this, but it looked like there's something else besides the body that's the source of consciousness. It wasn't like an atheist, but he wanted a scientific explanation. And he couldn't come up with a cogent explanation other than there's something else going on besides the body. consciousness is something other than the body or the brain. And there's many such books. I'll just quickly mention one more because it's really neat. In Seattle, another lady, heart surgeon, same thing. She went to the patient afterwards. How are you feeling? He described his out-of-body experience, but it was a little different. Said he went above the operating table, he floated across the ceiling, he went out the window, up 2 flights outside the building, and found himself eyeball to eyeball with the janitor's closet, 2 flights above. And there was a little ledge above the janitor's closet that had a pair of sneakers with non-matching shoelaces, or sneaker laces. So she went to the janitor, and the janitor said, I keep this door locked, nobody can get in. So for somebody to know what was inside and what was described as what was inside, they had to have seen it from someplace other through the door because they keep it locked. And so she went, or had somebody go above and look down, and there's a little ledge, and there's a pair of sneakers with unmatching shoelaces. What? And she did the same thing that Dr. Savam did, I forget her name, and other doctors with others. So it happens. Main point is the seat of consciousness empirically is not the body. It's not the brain, it's not the neurological system. All those things work because there's a driving force behind it. It's important. It's like, okay, there's empirical evidence that Bhagavad Gita's got it. Although we don't necessarily function that way, we have some faith that it's true, but we're also strongly identifying with the body. One other thing, this little show and tell. Sometime if you happen to go to Los Angeles, kindly do 2 things. 3 things. Visit the temple. Visit the Govindas, it's right next to the temple. And in between the temple and Govindas is an exhibition called the First American Theistic Exhibition that Prabhupada engaged his disciples in creating, and this is one of the exhibits. And it's all high tech, so when you walk in, it's kind of like a narrow corridor, and they have these glass enclosures that have the dioramas behind them, and there's a voice that narrates what's the story behind the diorama. So in this one, it's like you're in India because the lights go out. That was my experience anyways. I felt like this is what's going on. And then this particular enclosure was a mylar mirror. Mylar mirror is, it looks like a mirror, but it's actually, with the lighting is right, you can see through it. So the light goes out, and then from this side, from the side, on the other side of the mylar mirror, there's a light that goes on, and you can see everyone standing there looking at their reflection, standing there looking at the mylar mirror. And the voice, little music, very deep, resonating, British sounding voice says, take a good look at yourselves. Who are you? The music. Are you that body? Really? A few other things. And then that light goes out, and then the light goes on inside. And it's a spotlight that goes first to the embryo, and a little light goes on inside or by the body of the embryo, and you hear a heartbeat. Dud, 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 dud. There's some nice music, and then that light goes down, and the spotlight goes on to a little baby, and you hear the baby crying. That spotlight goes down, there's a little light on his chest. That light goes down, you hear a little kid bouncing a ball, playing with other kids, making kid noises, bouncing a ball. And it goes through the whole thing. Man holding his money bag and bouncing the money bag, and it's so forth. And then you get over on this side, and the guy starts coughing, and then light goes out. because the soul, so then there's some explanation of the transmigration of the soul. It's from Bhagavad Gita. It's a nice way to make the message very clear. And slide changer, there we go. So the soul is within material nature, and material nature and the soul together generally result in fruitive activity, karma. But the karma and material nature is being controlled by the three modes, and the controller of the three modes is Krishna. So Bhagavad Gita teaches us all these things. I thought of a nice verse after our Zoom class on whatever the night was, Tuesday night. We were supposed to have class, but it was supposed to be a big snowstorm. Nikartritvam nikarmani lokasya srijate prabho. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, never, this is about material nature, never think of yourself as the cause of the result of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of action, nor the cause of the result of action, nor that you are inducing others to act. If that's taken away, what's left? And I was thinking about this specifically for Cornell. I mean, those of you who are students here, those of you that are students elsewhere, you have to work really hard. It's not that you shouldn't work really hard, but when you're working really hard doing whatever it is that you're doing now or later when you're in some occupation, all this is being, the second half of the verse, all of this is being carried out by material nature. So what's our role? That's all being carried out by material nature. It's to know who you are and to act within material nature in harmony with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the work that's suited for you given your psychophysical nature, and offering all of that to Krishna. That's what we are to do. And by that process, gradually becoming detached from the misidentification with material nature and instead identifying with who you are. So there's the Ishvara out of the 5 topics, and we're ready for the next one, as long as the slide changer works. It's not working. The last one is Kala. The topic that there's more verses in Bhagavad Gita than any other topic is the modes of nature. And the one that there's least description of is Kala, or time. But time is really, really important, because without time nothing happens. Or it's not just time, but it's time energy, Kala Shakti, because it's one of Krishna's energies. So here's some information about Kala, or time. It's God's energy. I think I need a new battery in this thing. The most powerful force in the material world and the ultimate among killers. It's the cause of transformation. In Prakriti. And time moves in cycles, as you know. It's nice. Time it's not just linear, it goes in cycles. And then there's small cycles, and there's medium cycles and big cycles. But that's how time energy moves. And as it moves, it brings about transformations. Here's the message of Bhagavad Gita, time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds. Under the influence of eternal time, the cosmic manifestation is created, maintained, and annihilated at regular intervals. So has anyone seen time? We see the movements of time. We see time destroys things. It also brings things into being. But who has seen? The artists sometimes try to depict. Here's some ISKCON artists. Looks like Abraham Lincoln sitting in the Lincoln Memorial, looking really powerful. And time I am, the destroyer of all things. Another nice painting is this one. This is time and someone being destroyed by the force of time, and it's devouring everyone and everything slowly. but surely. Now I wanted to do a couple images of Kalarupa, the Grim Reaper. There see some skulls in the background and an image of death with his big scepter, Kalarupa. Now before there were GPSs, people had astrolabes. And just a little bit on this. It's an instrument that navigators would use to determine when they're out in the sea how to get from point A to point B. They needed one other thing, they needed a compass. But you're out in the sea, you got a compass, and you know the direction. But the wind may blow this way, the wind may blow that way, so you can't just go in a certain direction, you have to know where you are. So an astrolabe tells you where you are, as well the compass tells you the direction you're moving in. And I learned about this, I became interested in this from Sariputta, because he speaks about this specifically with Vedic cosmology, and you'll see why in just a minute, but there's all kinds of things. This is in Latin, but Sagittarius and the Libra, this particular ring shows the constellations in the sky, and here's it's not working at all. There we go. Here's the different parts. There's some moving parts across the top. There's some things in the back that doesn't move. It's called the mater. And as if you don't have a cloudy sky, you can see where the constellations are. You can get your location as well as direction, so you can go to where you want to go. And Govinda. It has a lot to do with the orbit of the sun, which moves into time, because Vedic picture of time, some of you read the Bhagavatam, there's a calculation of time by the atom, and the smallest unit of time is how much time it takes for the sun to cross an atom. And then so many atoms makes the next unit of time, so many atoms the next unit of time, and so forth and so on. So it's the movements of time. I'm not going to go through all this. This is how an astrolabe works, but you don't need to know that. The ecliptic circle and important stars are represented on another plate, etc., etc. So here's the Vedic planetarium, or Temple of Vedic Planetarium, and I'm going to show you the end of finale is a little video of the devotee who very kindly sent me his explanation of the Vedic Planetarium. So, is anybody here not familiar with the TOVP, Temple of Vedic Planetarium? Joe, you know what that one is? You know the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in Mayapur? No? Okay. The last full moon was Gora Purnimas when Lord Chaitanya appeared. He gave the chanting, popularized Yuga Dharma, the means of achieving spiritual perfection, and he appeared in Mayapur. So Prabhupada instructed that he wanted a large temple. So this is the design of the temple, and he wanted to have three parts. The large dome in the center is the temple of Radha Madhava and the Ashtasakis, etc. Panchatattva, Lord Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita. You know that mantra? Okay. So there's a Panchatattva altar, then. Okay. So that's the central, and then on this side is going to be a separate altar for Lord Nrsimhadev, and on this side is going to be, behind this, is the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. So he didn't call it Radha Madhava Temple, it's the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. And he asked Sariputta and others to study Srimad Bhagavatam diligently and make a model of how the universe, the structure of the universe could be depicted three-dimensionally in this temple of Vedic planetarium, a picture of the universe. So, how the universe works is essential in understanding the Kala Chakra. Kala means time, Chakra means wheel. So the wheel of time moves, and as the wheel of time moves with the sun, then all of the other planets are also moving on the power of the power of the sun moving the planets. So here's a nice description. This is cosmology. Here's Mount Sumeru, that's at the center of this flat plain called Bhumandala. And at the top, there's like an axle that goes out horizontally. And on the other side of the axle is a big wheel. And the wheel is moving slowly, clockwise direction. And as the wheel is moving on the axle, mounted on the axle is the sun. The sun is on a chariot on that axle. So I'm going to show you, and then we're going to be done with this. Here's the person speaking, narrating this, is Antarjweep. He has an Australian accent because he's from Australia. But he's the person in charge of constructing the whole planetarium. And the key part for you to listen to, there's information, but the key part is the movement of the sun. In understanding how our universe works, the sun is very important. And it's a geocentric, not a heliocentric picture of the universe. So it's going to start, I'll prepare you. Down here, this is Ananta Shesh at the bottom of the universe. And then at the bottom of in this region of Ananta Shesh, there's the lower planetary systems and so forth. Then he goes up vertically. The universe does a vertical picture. I hope it works.
So at the bottom of the planetary display we have Shesha holding up the earth. This is Shesh, the empowered incarnation. There we have Ananta speaking Bhagavatam to the four Kumaras, and above the 7 subterranean planets. Here we can see Jambudvip, the central island of Bhumandala, and Bharatvarsha is situated on the southern side of that. 8 other varshas with Ilavrita Varsha in the center, various supporting mountains with large trees upon them described in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the very center of Ilavrita Varsha is Mount Meru, Golden Mountain. Atop Mount Meru are the cities of important demigods, Lord Brahma in the center, the 8 Dikpalas in the cardinal directions and sub-directions. Moving out, we can see the broader Bhumandala, 7 concentric islands and oceans surrounding them. The 7th of these islands is Pushkaradweep. On that island is Manasotra mountain, and on the mountain there's various cities of demigods such as Indra. Out further is Loka mountain. These large elephants stand atop Loka mountain to balance Bhumandala. Outside of Loka mountain is Aloka Varsha, which is dark. The rays of the sun and the other luminaries extend up to Loka mountain. On Manasotra mountain here on Pushkaradweep, the sun travels above this mountain at the southernmost point of its annual orbit. Above Bhumandala is Bhuvarloka, which is the residence of the Charanas, Siddhas, Yakshas, Gandharvas, and above there is Swargaloka, beginning from the sun and extending up to the pole star Dhruvaloka. This is the moving part of the planetary display. Here we can see the sun and the moon moving in their chariots. The chariots are being drawn by horses moving in the anti-clockwise direction, but they're travelling with the wheel of time moving in the clockwise direction faster, so it looks as if they're moving backwards. Above them are the zodiac of stars, more planets, and another realm of stars. So here we can see everything moving with the Kala Chakra, circumambulating the axis that connects Mount Meru with Dhruvaloka. Above these planets, we come to the planet of the seven sages, the Saptarshi. You can see them here, they're commonly known as the Big Dipper, and then Dhruvaloka, the pole star. On the ocean of milk situated there, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, who is the Paramatma within everyone's heart, he resides on Anantashesh. Moving up beyond there, we have Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka. In this video, we haven't included many of the details for there, but on Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, we have residences of the Lord, such as Lord Varaha, Lord Vamana, and so on. Here's Brahmaloka, and on Brahmaloka, we also have a form of the Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu as the Sahasrashesha Purush. Beyond there is the seven coverings of the universe, earth, water, fire, etc. And outside of the universes is the abode of Lord Shiva, Shivaloka. There he resides eternally. Beyond Shivaloka, we come to Mahavishnu, Karanodakshaya Vishnu, with innumerable universes that have emanated from the pores of his transcendental body. Here you can see him being served by Rama Devi. Then we come to the Brahmajyoti, the effulgence of the Lord's transcendental body. Penetrating through the Brahmajyoti, we come to the Vaikuntha planets. We're showing 24 planets of the Vaikuntha realm in this model. The Lord, with 4 arms, is holding the conch, disc, club, and lotus, and the various combinations of those 4 make 24. Then we come to Goloka Vrindavan. Here we can see Radha Madhava, and we'll also be showing the other primary rasas. Krishna with the cowherd boys, Krishna being served, Krishna with Madhya Yashoda. So this is an overview of the planetary display to be shown in the main dome of the temple.
Interesting. Thank you. So there's, this is a Bhakti Guided article that appeared just recently, and it's describing how time is to be understood by the movements of the sun. The title of the chapter in the Bhagavatam is Calculation of Time from the Atom, and they're making a correlation between atomic clocks and this, modern scientific time dilation thing. So that's, I'm interested in time because it's like not easy to understand it. So if you didn't understand it, it's quite okay. It's not easy to understand. But just some appreciation is, within Bhagavad Gita there are essences. In Srimad Bhagavatam those essences are expanded further, and the whole of the Vedic wisdom gives us a whole picture of these 5 features, of which the essence is in a simple capsule-like form in Bhagavad Gita. And it gives us a method through the yoga system how to live our lives in a practical way, so that knowing who we are becomes our life instead of not knowing who we are, living our life in darkness or illusion. So that's little Bhagavad Gita class 101. See if there's some discussion. Bhagavad Gita. Abrupt ending, sorry about that. Yes, sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very, very captivating class. I'm really ecstatic to see the temple of the Vedic, the temple of the Vedic planetarium.
Long drive from Syracuse.
Yeah, I live my life on this platform, unfortunately.
Okay.
So I have a question, you know, in regards to, you know, I mentioned so many things of, you know, chariots and models of the universe and so many captivating things, but obviously in our society and even the mainstream of how our universe is built, that's not what we're taught in school, that's not even our reference or vantage point at all. And I was just wanted to, you know, how do we take this in a way, you know, that kind of rises above just mythology or something like that? How do we actually practically be able to like integrate this or kind of see this model? Does that make sense?
How do you see the model? Well, you have to have spiritual vision to see the model. But you know, is it what is it meaningful at all? And you know, one of the ways that it's meaningful at all, there's two ways that it's meaningful at all. Just like recently there was a lunar eclipse, and modern